So you want to get more money to invest, but you don't have it in your account. Well, I'm going to show you how you can get it from your already existing properties. So a property in itself is a store of wealth. And so you have to think logically, you are storing wealth in the asset that you can access at any point in time. Now, how do we access this? Remortgaging or refinancing a property. So the way that we do this is by getting a new mortgage on the property. So you will hear things like refinancing, remortgaging, and a couple of other ways. But really, it's getting a mortgage on the property, which is a debt, and that is paid back to you in a majority of situations. So why do people refinance or remortgage anyway? Well, the number one reason is obviously getting access to the money, and you can spend this on whatever you want. I actually read a comment the other day like, oh, you can only refinance if you're using it to buy another property. Absolutely not true, by the way. I just want to make that very clear, and if that was you commenting it, only comment on things you know about. That's absolutely not true. All right. So refinancing is simply getting a new debt. And I'll go through an example of this in a moment. And you can use that for whatever you want. Now, it's important to know that obviously that debt comes with a cost. So for example, if interest rates are 5% and I get £50,000 out, I need to be paying 5% on that, which is £2,500 spread over the year. So £216 a month, all right? So I need to be aware of that. However, it's also tax-free money. Now, people seem to hate it when I say that, apparently, but the point of it is that because you're assuming it as debt, instead of taking it out and selling the property, you don't pay any tax on that. Now, you do pay a cost to that, but if you took out £50,000 and you're a high income tax earner, then £20,000 of that would go to the tax man. So think about it. That's going to be the equivalent of 16 years worth of interest, okay? Because you're not paying any tax on that. Now, a majority of you, if you are anything like me, end up using that to buy another buy-to-let property. But you can use it for whatever you want. So how do you assess your property? And this is really important in line with something called loan to value. Now, for boring vanilla buy-to-let properties, you're likely to get a 75% loan to value. What that means is whatever the surveyor that goes out determines as the value of your property, the bank or the lender will go, hey, here's 75% of that, as long as it all stacks up. And you do need to make sure it's got something called rental coverage. Now, when you're in commercial lending, you don't need to worry about that, but most of us are going to be in that stage. What rental coverage is usually 125%. You're thinking, what the hell does that mean? What it means is the rent needs to be 25% above what the mortgage payment is going to be. For example, if the mortgage payment is going to be $1,000 a month, it needs to be able to achieve $1,250 in order for them to give you that money. Really important to understand. As long as that box is ticked and you're all credit worthy and tick all the boxes for them, they'll give you 75% of that. So if it's a £200,000 property, they will give you $150,000. Why is this so important? Well, you need to think of yourself of when it's even worthwhile to access this money. Because if it's only £5,000, well, you're probably going to pay a few £1,000s in fees. However, let's say you bought the property 3 years ago for 150 grand. Well, if you bought them in the areas that my investors invest in and I invest in, that would be close to 190,000 now. So you've got an additional 40 grand in equity. So we'd look at releasing that money. So how does it work if you've got it cash? And how does it work if you've already got a mortgage on it? So let's assume you own the property in cash. What a fortunate position we are in, right? So if I own this in £200,000 property and it's all cash, there's no debt on it. Well, if I raised a mortgage on it, 75%, 150,000 would go in my pocket. No questions asked. And what they do is they put a charge against the property. It's really important this. You know, you hear people go, you don't own the property, the bank does. That's just not true at all. You do own the property, but they have security over the property. And what that means is they put a first charge over the property. What this means is if you stop paying them, they can take the property and force you to sell it. Okay? So only ever get a mortgage if you intend to pay it. Fairly obvious, right? So if you got that, it goes in. Now here's the important part of where people get really confused on the figures. So just try and go along with me. If you've already got a mortgage on the property, you need to write down and get something called the redemption figure. The redemption figure is how much you owe to the bank or the lender. How you get this, by the way, is you should know it already with a quick check. You can log in, most banks and that have a portal, but if not, you just call the bank and say, hey, can I get a redemption figure as of this date? So if you're thinking about refinancing, I would get the redemption figure for 3 months from now, maybe 4 months from now, so you understand. That's really important, by the way, because you might have something called early redemption fees. So if you've taken out a 5-year fixed mortgage and you want to refinance on year 2, well, you're going to have early redemption fees. Whereas if you've got a 2-year mortgage or a variable rate mortgage, you can usually refinance without early redemption fees. Really important. For example, if I get my redemption figure back and they say you've got a £110,000 mortgage on this property, that's really important because when I refinance at 150,000, let's not take account of any fees or anything like that, the first thing that's going to happen is it will pay off your old mortgage because there's a new mortgage on this. So the 110,000 gets paid back to the other mortgage company and then the 40,000 goes into your pocket. So it's really important to understand the new debt that's going to replace the old debt and then therefore how much money is going to be left in your pocket. So what's the process of a remortgage? Well, the first thing you need to do is get in touch with your current lender. They might give you a special variable rate, which is a bit of a discount variable rate because they want to retain your business. If you're not happy with what they are looking for, then what you would do is engage with maybe a mortgage broker if you need to. Most of the time I would personally, and they will show you your options out there so that you can decide what it is you want to achieve with this and what lender you want to go to. Once you've picked your lender, you then need to pick a solicitor. Now, if you've got a trusted solicitor already, that's fine, but what you need to do is talk to them and make sure they are on the lender's panel. This is really important. So each lender has a panel of solicitors that they are happy working with. So what they would have done is a series of checks on them. Getting on a lender's panel isn't that difficult for most people, by the way. So if they're not, and you really want to use your solicitor, you can instruct them to get on the panel. If not, pick a solicitor or go to lender and ask for a recommendation of some solicitors that are on their panel. What they will then do is start the legal process and they will represent you and the lender on this, just getting everything together. Very simple process. The lender, if it's the same lender, they probably won't send out a surveyor to value the property. If it's a new lender, they probably will. So they'll send out a valuer on the property to assess the new value, and then they'll do your checks on you. So they'll do credit checks to make sure you've got those court county judgments. They'll make sure that you're earning money, and if you've got an existing portfolio, what they'll do is they'll want to see proof that you are a good landlord. And what this means is, have you actually been renting out the property? Have you been collecting the rent? Have you been paying your mortgage on time? And then at that point, they will release it. The typical time frame that they will quote you is 4 to 6 weeks. It will take between 8 and 12 weeks in my experience. So it's a very simple process you need to go through, and I strongly recommend it if you're looking to utilize the money. Now, this is the key. I see a lot of people remortgaging and refinancing with no purpose of the money. There's no point doing that at all, because if all it's going to do is sit in your bank account and erode through inflation, then why would you do that? You're better having the extra protection, keeping it in cash. However, if you are sat there and you're looking to invest in another property, you're going through that remortgage process now, starting the remortgage, or indeed you've got 100k plus sat in your bank, well, this is where we can help you. So my main business is Aspire Property Group, and what I help people do is build portfolios and get your money working hard for you so you can focus working hard on your money. So this is a complete hands-free service. I'm not going to go through the full details now, but what you can do is book in a one-to-one strategy session where we're going to go through where you're at now, where you want to get to, and if we can help you on that journey. So the way you can get access to that for now is completely free. You can put APG in the comments, or I'll click the link, I'll put it in the description and the comments and pin it to the top. So click on that, fill in your details. One of my team will be in touch over the next day or two where we can talk with each other, make sure we're a right fit, and then book you in for that free one-to-one strategy session. Let me know what you thought of this video in the comments. Ultimately, I really love doing these videos, but it's not for me, it's for you, and hopefully they're adding value. If you are a return viewer but you haven't subscribed yet, which is about 50% of you, by the way, it would really help me out if you subscribe to the channel. It's a real key marker to see how much value you got. So hit the subscribe and the notification bell now, and if you've got 2 seconds, just tap that like button, and I'll see you in the next video.